Annual reports for Creative New Zealand and the Retirement Commission.
I present the report of the Registrar of Pecuniary Interests and Other Specific Interests entitled Registrar's Inquiry into Carl Bates MP's compliance with the requirement of Appendix B of the Standing Orders. Those papers are published under the authority of the House. A Select Committee report has been delivered for presentation.
Report of the Justice Committee on the petition of Christine McCarthy.
No bills have been introduced. The House comes to oral questions. The first in the name of Nancy Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, what recent reports has she seen on the economy?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr. Speaker, today Stats NZ released its September quarter labour market data. The data was in line with market expectations, with the unemployment rate sitting at 5.3%. The data shows the effects of an economic downturn, which was caused by a period of sky-high inflation, followed by very high interest rates as the Reserve Bank steeply increased the official cash rate in response to out-of-control inflation. Unemployment, Mr. Speaker, tends to be one of the last indicators to turn in an economic recovery. Economic forecasters are expecting it to fall next year as the economy strengthens.
Supplementary question. How does the data compare with forecasts?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the unemployment rate is broadly in line with forecasts, including the Reserve Bank's August monetary policy statement. Interestingly, it is also in line with Treasury's pre-election forecasts from 2023, in which Treasury forecast that at this point 165,000 people would be unemployed. In fact, the number today is 160,000. That means that what we have just experienced in the September quarter is what was forecast by the Treasury to happen under the previous government's watch before it left office.
And so is calling out like that.
Well said, Mr. Speaker. Of course, this government is not satisfied with that. We are working hard to drive growth in the economy, which will in turn drive more people into employment. Forecasters expect the economy to return to growth in coming quarters, which is good news for job creation and every Kiwi looking for work.
Supplementary question. Why has unemployment risen over the past few quarters?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the economy is where it is now because in 2023, New Zealand had, by independent measures, the most overheated inflationary economy in the advanced world. Inflation was far above the target band, fuelled by reckless government spending. The Reserve Bank had to raise the official cash rate to 5.5%, the highest rate since 2008. And that, of course, is why the economy went into a long, painful downturn. It is now recovering. Members on the other side of the House might want to look at the actions of the previous government when judging today's data. And members, I would also say this.
That is enough. Thank you. End of the question. Thank you. Nancy Liu.
What is the government doing to address unemployment?
Well, Mr. Speaker.
Wait, just wait. You can't start a barrage like that before there's even one word out of the Minister's mouth.
Well, Mr. Speaker, a growing and strong economy is the key to getting more Kiwis into work. This is absolutely a time for backing effort, aspiration and job creation. It is not the time for introducing broad new taxes and returning to reckless fiscal management. Our government has been focused on rebuilding the economy to deliver more and better paying jobs, fast-tracking private sector projects that are job-rich, from housing to infrastructure expansions, opposed by my colleagues on the other side of the House, delivering $7 billion of government-funded construction work, the investment boost tax policy. These are the policies which drive growth and job creation. This is the prescription New Zealand needs.
Just remind all ministers that concise answers are good answers. Question 2, the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
A point of order, the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the Prime Minister is in the building. He was on the tiles about 5 minutes ago answering media questions, so I seek leave for my question to be held until he's available in the debating chamber to answer it.
Well, it's an interesting reference you're making to a member's not being present, which is not appropriate. However, I'll put the leave. Is there any objection to that course of action?
To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government statements and actions?
The Honourable David
Mr.
Seymour.
Speaker, yes, absolutely, and particularly this government's very careful use of its own finances. We inherited conditions where government spending had increased very rapidly, leading to high inflation and high interest rates that were hurting Kiwis and their businesses, their farms, their firms and their families. We have set a very conservative operating allowance, forcing ministers to do more with less each year, just as families and households have had to do over the last few years. As a result of the government being careful with its finances, we are able to see declining inflation, declining interest rates and an economic recovery for the benefit of all New Zealand.
No, sorry, you can't make a statement like that. Just calm it down.
Supplementary question. Does he stand by his claim 6 months ago that unemployment had peaked, given that it's still rising, with as many people now out of work as the entire population of Tauranga?
Mr. Speaker, I do stand by that statement because clearly unemployment has moved very little since that time. It is peaking and will decline in good time. As the Minister of Finance has recently said, one of the last things to be fixed when you have to do an economic repair job is unemployment. First comes the government spending blowout, thanks Labor, then comes the inflation, then comes the interest rates, and this government, just as the Labor government knocked each of those dominoes down, is putting them up in sequence, but there are no shortcuts.
Supplementary question. If the unemployment rate was unacceptable, as he said in September 2023, and is it now more unacceptable given 37,000 more people have lost their jobs since then? Or does he apply one set of standards for the previous government and a different set of standards to his own?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, we have always treated unemployment as a percentage figure. It is currently 5.3%. That is around 165,000 people. What's interesting is that in late 2023, the time of the statement the member referred to, the Treasury was forecasting on Labor Party policy settings that unemployment would be 165,000 people. So if you want to play these kinds of games, then you could say that under this government, 5,000 fewer people have lost their jobs than they would have with those guys' mismanagement.
Well, I certainly don't want to play games with any figures at all. The Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the pre-election fiscal update is tracking according to plan, what happened to the 2% economic growth that the Treasury were forecasting before the election, which has actually turned under his leadership into a shrink of the economy?
Mr. Speaker, the member is right to point out the difference in economic growth, but the other way you could look at it is that under this government, in spite of softer economic conditions which have multiple unexpected causes, the facts are that more people have kept their job than otherwise expected. And for New Zealanders anxious about losing their job, for New Zealanders trying to put food on the table and pay their bills, a government that is good for employment is good for Kiwi families.
Does he regard rising unemployment as being a sign of a government that's good for employment?
That's right. Mr. Speaker, well, the member's really got to decide. The forecasts when the people kicked him out, quite rightly in my view, were that unemployment would continue to rise. In actual fact, it's risen less than it was forecast when he went out of government, deposed by the people of this country.
Supplementary question. Does he see any link between the fact that 1 in 7 young New Zealanders are now unemployed under his leadership and the fact that 200 New Zealanders every day are giving up and permanently leaving the country?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, as I was saying on behalf of another minister yesterday, I think sometimes the opposition fails to give due credit to the intelligence and perspective that New Zealanders have. So a wiser man once said, maybe they measure the minds of others by their own. But the fact is that New Zealanders understand that the economic conditions we face today are a product of at least three things. The conditions set by historic policy decisions, including those of the now opposition, the previous government. International factors, such as the world's largest economy effectively deciding to renegotiate its deal with the rest of the world economically, and also the policies of the current government. When they look at the third factor, the policies of the current government, they see a government that spends carefully, that cuts red tape and regulation, that tries to push people up instead of pulling them down, as we saw so often from the opposition. And that is why this government is in control, because people can see the things we're doing are making their future brighter.
Well, does he stand by his claim that for unemployed people who, quote, don't play ball, the free ride is over? If so, how many of the 37,000 extra people who have joined the unemployment queue, who had jobs before he became Prime Minister, does he regard as not playing ball?
Mr. Speaker, in answer to the first leg of the question, yes, absolutely. This government doesn't believe that welfare is a lifestyle choice. We believe that if you can work, you should work. We believe that you have obligations to look for work, just as the people who get up every morning and go to work to pay the taxes have to fulfil their obligation to pay the tax to fund your welfare. That is absolutely what this government believes in, mutual obligation. And there's something else about it, is that we believe that people who don't have a job right now have value and do have the capability to get one. We don't consign them to the scrap heap with the soft bigotry of low expectations like those guys did.
Question number three. Question number three, Dr. Carlos Chong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister.
Dr. Chong. It's quiet on all sides of the House. Dr. Chong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister responsible for RMA reform. What announcement has he made regarding Eden Park?
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr. Speaker, today I've announced the government's released an investigative report showing Eden Park planning restrictions could be costing hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue, with hundreds of fewer jobs. Eden Park is a vital asset for Auckland and New Zealand, hosting major sporting and entertainment events that inject millions into the economy. But restrictive local planning rules are stifling Eden Park's ability to drive growth. It's not worth noting the rules were put in place in an attempt to balance use of Eden Park as a venue with local community preferences, but it's important to ensure that the rules remain fit for purpose and do not hold back Auckland's event and tourism sectors.
What did the investigative reports into Eden Park's planning rules show?
Mr. Speaker, it found that restrictions on Eden Park's operations will cost the region at least $432 million in lost income, with 751 fewer jobs over the next 10 years. The investigation was carried out under a new power in the RMA introduced in August to modify or remove provisions in local plans if they negatively impact growth, development capacity or employment. The government is not willing to let unnecessary restrictions in district plans hold back millions or billions in economic potential.
Supplementary. What changes have been recommended as part of this report?
Mr. Speaker, the report contained a large number of recommendations. For example, permitting 12 large concerts of more than 30,000 people each year, as well as 20 medium-sized concerts of between 10 and 30,000 people each year. More flexibility on timing for concerts, including permitting concerts of up to 8 hours duration, more flexibility for sport games, and the removal of size limits for conferences and large functions.
Supplementary. What are the next steps in this process?
Mr. Speaker, public consultation begins today, will run until 19 November 2025 via the Ministry for the Environment's online hub. Local residents and business owners can give feedback. We're also consulting, obviously, with the Auckland Council, and following the consultation, the government will consider what changes are warranted to boost growth in the region, and we hope to make announcements by the end of the year.
Question 4, Dr. David Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Resources. What reports, if any, has he seen regarding the resources sector?
The Honourable Shane Jones.
Mr. Speaker, I can announce that we have mounted the crest of a golden millennium for mining. Santana, major investment, has been issued a mining permit for 30 years, over $5–6 billion worth of wealth, and to the small number of worrywarts, allow science and technology to wash away your unnecessary anxieties.
Just wait for the House to settle.
Supplementary. How will this contribute to the economy?
Speaker, as we know, as a consequence of failed economic policies we inherited when we took over in 2023, we are managing a situation where unemployment is sadly quite high. But what about the 800 to 900 direct and indirect jobs? I say to the politicians oozing green elitism, think about the New Zealanders who will gain those jobs, who this very day are looking for new opportunities. And think about the royalties that will come over 14 years of operation. I say again, we're entering a golden age. Not that I can completely claim all the credit.
Supplementary. What other reports has he seen regarding the resource sector?
Speaker, Father Christmas has come early. On the west coast of New Zealand, a sum of $172 million over the last day or three has been announced to be dedicated to the Federation Mine, Reefton, now known as the Andurra Mine. Why do people on the other side of the House hate investment? Why do they undermine jobs? Why do they stand with frogs and geckos and unnecessary critters? No, we need jobs, and I am happy to announce $172 million is going directly into the economy of the West Coast, and I fear that it'll be more busts they make of my good self.
But I think answers should not contain questions to other parties.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. What will this announcement mean for the local economy?
Sir, modesty forbids that I claim total credit, but please think about the forlorn period of time that has afflicted these parts of the South Island. When we have fresh investment, unlike downtown Auckland, you don't get rich by doing each other's washing. We are able to extract the endowment, the resources, the critical minerals, the gold, the silver. What New Zealander does not want a brighter future through new investment and the jobs and the income and the growth that will spread through a part of New Zealand that has been neglected for far too long.
Supplementary, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Can I ask the Minister, just looking around this Parliament and this building here, about what percentage of it is derived from extraction?
So if I can deploy my fifth form mathematics, I'd say about 96%.
Question number 5. We're just waiting on just wait for a minute before I call the member. Question number 5, the Honourable Barbara Emmons.
Maluni, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, does she stand by all her statements and actions?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr. Speaker, yes, in the context in which they were given. And I particularly stand by my statement that with a hard-won economic recovery now underway, this is not the time for broad new taxes and a return to reckless fiscal management. Instead, this is a time for government policies that back effort, aspiration and job creation, and we are the government doing that.
Supplementary. If she is happy to use pre-election forecasts, will she compare her recessionary negative 1.1 growth rate to that in pre-election forecasts, which was 2%?
Well, Mr. Speaker, what I would compare is the actions that have been taken. And in particular, I want to highlight the success of the fast-track legislation introduced by this government, opposed by those opposite, which so far has seen the Auckland Port expansion permitted, with 140,000 jobs being supported over the coming decades. It has seen the Milldale housing development fast-tracked, supporting 3,500 jobs. It has seen the Maitahi Village housing development in Nelson fast-tracked, supporting 2,700 jobs. If you stand for jobs, you should vote for them, and you didn't vote for fast-track.
Just say to government members, they may find it necessary to support the minister clearly with things that are not being said that they would like to be said. It's not helpful. Allow ministers to answer questions. The Honourable Barbara Emmons.
Supplementary. Why is she cherry-picking the best number that suits her when she has said, quote, forecasts aren't reality, unquote, and the reality is things are worse?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not quite sure why the member would talk about cherry picking when in her own press release today she chose to highlight the increase in net departures of New Zealanders. Now, of course, Mr. Speaker, that didn't start under this government. In the 21 months of data before our government came to office, annual net migration of New Zealand citizens increased by 38,000, whereas in the 21 months since we were elected, that number has only increased by 5,800. If you want to talk cherry picking, sort it out.
Supplementary.
Answers to questions should relate to government activity, not attacks on the opposition, and that is dangerously close to that, which will see limited opportunities moving forward. The Honourable Barbara Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the 160,000 unemployed people, the highest in 30 years, a sign that her economic plan is working?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it certainly isn't the highest unemployment number in 30 years as a proportion of the workforce. It's also the case that it remains below the long-term average. But most importantly for that member, 160,000 is lower than the 165,000 unemployed people like Grant Robertson was predicting prior to the election. I want to see more workers getting the jobs they deserve in this economy, which is why we are driving growth and job-creating businesses. And I'll tell you what won't help. New taxes, reckless fiscal management, a return to the old Labor ways.
There is a lot of noise coming from the centre row of the opposition that needs to just calm right down. The Honourable Barbara Emmons.
Supplementary. When will she take responsibility for growing unemployment, negative growth, increasing homelessness, record number of liquidations and KiwiSaver hardship withdrawals and increasing inflation, or will she continue to blame everyone else?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I certainly won't take responsibility for the economic mess this government inherited. What I will take responsibility for is the results we are delivering to fix it, including lowering taxes.
Hold on, sorry. That's ridiculous. Why ask a question if you don't want to hear an answer?
Including lower taxes, inflation back in band, lower interest rates, policies that drive job creation, fewer children growing up in emergency motel rooms. Mr. Speaker, delivering more state homes than that government delivered in the previous periods. We are a government that is delivering the fix. We inherited a mess and we're getting on with it.
No credibility.
Question 6, Chloe Swarbrick.
E te Premier, e tōtoko ana ia i ngā kōrero me ngā mahi katoa a tōna kāwanatanga.
The Honourable David Singh.
Mr. Speaker, yes, absolutely, particularly this government's decision to reverse the ban on oil and gas exploration. We risked being the only country in the world that was transitioning from gas back to coal. If we want to have a so-called just transition, we actually need transition fuels. And most people would much rather be burning gas to generate electricity than coal. What's more, it helps people with more affordable energy. You see, the member likes to say that people are doing it tough financially, and she may be right about that, but she can't also put in place policies that make it harder for them to provide for themselves and their families by banning technologies that make life more comfortable.
Is the government still committed to the Paris Agreement?
Mr Speaker, yes, the government is committed to the Paris Climate Agreement as it signed up 9 years ago. It may have been a long time for the member, but we keep that commitment.
How does he reconcile his statement that the government is still committed to the Paris Agreement with the government's announcement late last night that it will remove reference to, quote, contributing to the global effort under the Paris Agreement, end quote, from our climate change laws?
Mr Speaker, it's very simple. This government has something the member will be familiar with, known as the Zero Carbon Act, and that sets our domestic commitments to reduce emissions. Those emissions commitments or reduction commitments, I believe, are very, very strong and ambitious. And as a result, they are the targets that we need to adhere to. The Paris Agreement is something different, but actually that doesn't mean that we can't achieve one by pursuing the other.
Can he name just one individual or group externally from the government who the government consulted with, who supports the changes that were announced late last night to weaken our climate change laws?
Mr Speaker, yes, in answer to the member's question, I certainly can, but having the capability doesn't mean that I will, because, you see, there's a tone in this member's questions, the one that chants things like from the river to the sea, that makes people unwilling to be identified and be able to share their views. So that's why I'm not going to participate in her doxing and outing of people who have different views, and so I could name them, but I'm not going to.
Look, if there's going to be just a question, then a barrage as the answer comes. Not much point in continuing with the question. Close forward.
How exactly can he claim to be committed to our climate agreements while he is removing requirements for independent advice and accountability, removing reference to the Paris Agreement in law, and revoking rules that require our emissions trading scheme to align with our international climate agreements?
Well, Mr Speaker, very, very simply, we can achieve those reductions without necessarily using the mechanisms that the member describes. What's more, the member needs to reflect carefully, because she cannot have it both ways. I, like many members of this House, grew up in the north. I grew up in Whangarei. I've driven many times past and visited Portland Cement. And there's really tough decisions that governments face, that we face as a country. Do we want to put those 200-odd people at Portland out of work so that we can have Vietnamese cement on the shelf at Bunnings and in the concrete we use to build our homes? Or do we want to keep doing cement refining in New Zealand, keeping Kiwis in work? The member can't complain about jobs and the economy and the cost of living one day and then have policies that destroy people's effort to pursue those goals the next.
Is he aware that it is entirely feasible to create good green jobs in a sustainable economy, such as proposed by the Green Party in our Green Budget and Industrial Strategy?
Mr Speaker.
In so much as the Prime Minister has responsibility for...
Mster Speaker, I think you're...
In so much as he has responsibility for any other parties other than government's policies, he may choose to make a very brief response.
Mr Speaker, I seek your guidance. You see, it's against the rules for a member on the government side to ask a question designed to launch an attack on the opposition. But what if the opposition asked a question that could only be designed to launch an attack on the opposition? The fact is, Sir Chloe Swarbrick, sound bites and slogans don't create jobs. It's that simple. Over here in the real practical world, we have policies that are designed to get New Zealand working.
Sit down. Not going to have that sort of outburst. The reality is that it is the job of the opposition to point out the weaknesses, as they say, of the government, and therefore something the member needs to accept. Is there another supplementary, Chloe Swarbrick?
Somebody question.
I'm on my feet. I'm on my feet. Someone is going to leave. I'm on my feet, and it's not a good idea to call out. Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Can I ask the Minister as to whether the government intends to take advice from people about jobs when they've never had a real job?
No, that's not something the government is... the government's responsible for a lot of things. That's not one of them. Question. Listen, someone is going to have to symbolically leave so everyone else gets the message that question time is quiet when a question's being answered. The government crossbench back row might like to take that on board. The Honourable Willie Jackson, question number 7.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Social Development and Employment, does the Minister stand by her 50,000 job seeker reduction target? If so, why?
The Honourable Louise Upson.
Yes, I absolutely stand by our target of 50,000 fewer people on the job seeker support by 2030. Our government is ambitious for all New Zealanders, and our target is ambitious and reflects our government's view that work brings independence so people can lead healthier, happier lives. That's why we're delivering practical support, clearer expectations and stronger partnerships with employers to help more people move from welfare into work. And we've seen over 83,000 people leave benefit for work in the last 12 months.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister, how can she stand by her target when figures released today shows unemployment at a 9-year high? Job seekers have increased every quarter and she is nowhere near meeting her own target.
Mr Speaker, because as I've said in this House before, the job seeker target is ambitious and the numbers were always going to get worse before they got better. The pre-election fiscal update had unemployment at 5.3%. Today, it was announced at 5.3%. So while it is incredibly challenging for any individual that is without work right now, our government is focused on the practical steps that help them to prepare for work and get ready for work, and our economic growth agenda that we've already heard about today in terms of fast-track and mining jobs are on track.
Mr Speaker, does the Minister, does she think forecasts from MSD and DPMC are wrong that show she is failing to meet her own target and that she will be 40,000 people over by June 29?
Mr Speaker, the report that the member is referring to is a progress update on the job seeker target, and as I've said, I've never shied away from the fact that it was always going to get worse before it was better. But what our government is unwilling to accept is that for a young person who goes on to welfare under the age of 25, that means 18 future years of their life on welfare. A figure, Mr Speaker, that is 49% worse in the 6 years that they were in charge.
Speaker, who is correct? The Prime Minister, who encouraged young job seekers to look to horticulture jobs in the Hawke's Bay, or Paul Painter, CEO of Yummy Fruit, who said the industry wasn't short-staffed right now?
Well, Mr Speaker, I always agree with the Prime Minister, and there are jobs available. Otherwise, we would not have seen 83,000 New Zealanders leave welfare for work in the last 12 months, despite there being challenging economic times. 83,000 New Zealanders leaving welfare into jobs.
Every day. Mr Speaker, does the Minister think it's fair that if a job seeker fails to miss their targets to find work, they get sanctioned? But when she fails to meet her targets, she gets praised by the Prime Minister for making it harder for people to get support in the first place.
Mr Speaker, one of the things that we have done is got a way more active welfare system, which includes making it really easy through the traffic light system for those on benefit to know what their obligations are and to provide assistance and support to ensure that they fulfil their obligations. And yes, there's a consequence if they don't. Why do we have a system like that? Because we want more people exiting welfare into work, and over 83,000 in the last 12 months, I think is good news.
Question number 8, Urini Kaipara.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Housing. Does he stand by the government's proposed changes to the National Policy Statement on urban development?
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr Speaker, yes.
Supplementary. What advice, if any, has he received from the Minister of Crown Relations regarding the potential impact these reforms will have on treaty settlements in Tāmaki Makaurau?
I don't believe I've had any specific advice from the Minister that the member references in relation to that particular issue, although clearly the Minister and I work closely together across a range of different areas. I would emphasise for the member and the House that commitment to upholding Treaty of Waitangi settlements is a core coalition government priority.
Supplementary. How many Tāmaki Makaurau iwi and hapu were identified during the development of these reforms, and how many of their treaty settlements will be affected?
Mr Speaker, I don't have that specific number. And
I think we'll just stop the cross-party, cross-bench discussion. The Minister will start the answer again.
Mr Speaker, I don't have that specific number in front of me, but if the member puts it down as a written question, I'd be happy to get that feedback to her, or get that answer to her. As I say, upholding treaty settlements is a core government priority. In relation to Tāmaki Makaurau, the government is working with a range of iwi in the area around a range of different housing developments, including, for example, at the Carrington site, where we're making real progress, which is a land for housing program started under the last National Government, continued under the previous Labor-led government, and is continuing under this coalition government, where we are building houses at some scale, utilising what was formerly Crown land, and working with our iwi partners in relation to that project.
Supplementary. Can he confirm that the government's reforms to the National Policy Statement on Urban Development will not undermine nor conflict with settlement redress, including co-governance arrangements in Tāmaki Makaurau?
Mr Speaker, as I said a couple of times now, it is a government commitment to uphold Treaty of Waitangi settlements, and all of the changes we are making to national direction, for example, the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, will reflect that.
Supplementary, the Honourable Tamapotaka.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister please confirm that this government proposes to move a national statement in relation to Papakainga that will enable up to 10 houses to be built on Papakainga lands, and also that this government has articulated and foreshadowed that this government will commit over $400 million to have 1,000 houses built on Māori land?
Yes, Mr Speaker, I can confirm that there will be a national environmental standard developed in relation to Papakainga housing. It's our view as a government that there is real potential for this type of housing on Whenua to unlock the potential for different housing typologies that will put warm, dry homes in place for people in need. We expect to have the National Environmental Standard, which will slot into council district plans, developed and promulgated in the first half of 2026.
Question number 9, the Honourable Kieran McAnulty.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Housing, does he stand by his statements that, quote, it's clear that rough sleeping is a genuine problem, and, quote, we can and will do more for rough sleepers?
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Yes.
Supplementary. Why is the government working on legislation that would enable the removal of rough sleepers from central business districts?
The government isn't.
Supplementary. Why is the minister denying this when Police Minister Mark Mitchell confirmed on News Talk ZB this morning that, quote, Paul Goldsmith and Justice are doing a lot of work around that, end quote, and that legislation to move homeless people from CBDs to the suburbs was, quote, fully supported by caucus and the Prime Minister, end quote?
Mr. Speaker, the government is considering a range of different things in relation to the CBD. It is 8% of the country's economy. It is of national significance, and with the City Rail Link opening next year, the International Convention Centre opening, and an increased push for tourism, for example, from cruise ships, the government, as well as Auckland Council, is of the view that we can make the CBD a more desirable place for everyone to be than it currently is.
Supplementary. So which is it? The government isn't working on legislation to shift homeless people from the CBDs, or they are considering legislation to shift homeless people from the CBDs?
The member asked whether or not the government was developing legislation. The government is not, but as I say, we are looking at a range of things. We are looking at a range of things in order to make the CBD, in order to clean up the CBD.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Kira McAnulty.
Thank you very much.
Just wait for your colleagues to come down.
If people are concerned about entering the CBD because of homelessness, how does he expect them to feel when the issue is moved to their doorstep in the suburbs?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the member knows, rough sleeping and homelessness is part of a complex cocktail of issues that successive governments have had to grapple with. This government is putting additional resource into Housing First, which is an internationally proven, evidence-based program that I know the member supports, in order to specifically provide housing options for people who are rough sleepers. Housing First does not support prison cells. Housing First supports warm homes so that people who are sleeping rough on the streets can move in, and more specifically it provides the kind of wraparound support that people in those difficult situations often need. The starting point of Housing First is that it is difficult to supply people with mental health or addiction service support unless they are in a house in the first place, and that's why the government is proud to back Housing First. No one is pretending that this is a problem that is going to be solved overnight, and no one is pretending that this is not a difficult and complex problem that successive governments have had to grapple with, but we are working hard with frontline providers like the City Mission and others in the Auckland CBD to get on top of the problem.
The Honourable Tama Potaka. The Honourable Tama Potaka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister please confirm that this government has reduced the spend of over $1 million a day on emergency housing to less than $200,000 a day, funds nearly $500 million per annum on transitional housing, Housing First and other related programs, and has now contracted an additional 300 Housing First places, the majority of which are in Auckland, with Housing First providers to support rough sleepers within these and related contractual arrangements.
Good. When the House is ready, you might hear the start of the Minister's answer.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I can confirm that. As the member well knows, and the member yelling out the problem well knows, the government is working hard to make sure that we can supply warm, dry homes for people in very vulnerable situations. It is a complex, difficult challenge, but one that we are up for.
Supplementary.
A supplementary question, the Honourable Shane Jones, and no one else speaking.
To the Minister. Can he confirm it is not appropriate to use homelessness as a moral cloak to hide drug taking, criminality and violence?
Well, I don't think the Minister's got particular responsibility in that regard. Move now to question 10. Dr Hamish Campbell.
My question is to the Minister of Health. What recent announcements has the government made about boosting hospital capacity?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Simeon Brown.
Well, Mr Speaker, our government is delivering real results for patients and staff across the country. That's why we recently announced a program to deliver 140 new hospital beds at 5 of New Zealand's busiest hospitals. These new fast-tracked hospital wards will be open in the second half of 2026, boosting capacity and easing pressure where it's needed the most. This is part of our broader plan to strengthen health infrastructure, getting hospitals built faster, using smarter construction methods and ensuring our workforce is in place to deliver care. This government is delivering more beds, more capacity and better care for New Zealanders.
Supplementary. Which hospitals will benefit from this program?
Well, Mr. Speaker, a total of 140 new beds we delivered across 5 hospitals with operational funding for these wards approved by Health New Zealand. The first will be at Middlemore, where we're expanding general medicine capacity to take pressure off the emergency department. Waikato Hospital, a new assessment and diagnostic unit will speed up patient flow. Wellington Hospital, the new ward, will support acute care and help support the shorter stays in emergency department target. Nelson Hospital, the new ward, will provide flexibility during seismic work and add inpatient capacity ahead of the construction of the new inpatient building funded in the budget. And at Hawke's Bay, the new ward will cater for short-stay surgical patients and surgical assessments, freeing up space elsewhere in the hospital. These investments will make a real practical difference for both patients and staff.
Supplementary. How was the government able to deliver more wards than originally planned without increasing the cost?
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is what happens when you run a disciplined and efficient system. The rapid build wards will be constructed off-site and installed on hospital grounds, enabling faster, more cost-effective delivery while also providing flexibility to redeploy units to other hospitals if required. As part of Budget 2025, we expected to fund 3 new wards, but through a competitive procurement process and the use of modular construction, we can now deliver 4 wards within the same funding, alongside the 5th ward at Hawke's Bay and that hospital announced earlier this year. That is smart management, better value for money and faster delivery, exactly what New Zealanders elected this government for.
Supplementary. What impact will these new wards have once they're operational?
Well, Mr. Speaker, adding additional capacity to hospitals would usually take multiple years. However, through our use of rapid build wards, we can ease pressure on emergency departments, speed up admissions and discharges and improve patient flow across the hospitals faster, meaning both patients and staff will feel the benefits sooner. The rapid build wards will also give our frontline staff modern, flexible spaces to deliver the best possible care. Mr. Speaker, we're building capacity, supporting our workforce and making sure New Zealanders can get the care they need when they need it. That is what delivery looks like, and that's what our government stands for.
Question number 11, the Honourable Willow Jean Prime.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Education and asks, how can parents be confident that she is, quote, putting the child's needs at the centre of the education system, unquote, when educational experts have described the newly rewritten curriculum as, quote, more political than educational, unquote?
The Honourable Erica Stanford.
Mr. Speaker, in context, as stated in my press release from 5th of September, parents can absolutely be confident we're putting their children's need at the centre of the education system by ensuring 101,000 Year 1 to 8 students and their teachers will benefit from the skills and support of a learning support coordinator working in their school next year. Mr. Speaker, in response to the second part of the question, this is a direct quote taken from an open letter addressed to me in regards to the mathematics and statistics curriculum. I completely disagree with the small number of authors of that letter that there is no politics in our children's right to master key mathematical concepts like fractions, timetables, place value and geometry. There's nothing political about our maths curriculum, and I encourage the member to read it and engage in an intellectual debate on the content of the maths curriculum.
Supplementary.
We'll just have concise answers. Thank you. The Honourable Willow Jean Prime.
Thank you. Why should parents trust this curriculum is right for their kids when it puts kapahaka and maurako into the PE curriculum?
Well, Mr. Speaker, parents should trust this curriculum because it's knowledge-rich year by year and is aspirational for their kids. And it's very clear that the member opposite hasn't actually bothered to read the curriculum, because if she had, she would notice that in mathematics, for example, which relates to the primary question, that we are teaching children place value by teaching it to them in te reo Māori, because it makes much more sense to say makes much more sense to say Te Komarima, 10 and 5, than it does to say 15. She'd also be well advised to read it and to understand that we teach shapes in Te Reo Māori because it's easier to understand tapu toru, 3 sides, than it is a triangle. But it's clear she's not read it.
Just a minute. Look, sorry, but there is discussion going on all over the House, particularly on those backbenches over there. And one or two of you are in sights and will be going early if there cannot be a reasonable approach to questions being answered. The Honourable Willow Jean Prime.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary. How can parents be confident that the curriculum was written with their kids' learning in mind when Year 3s will be taught Charles Elton's concept of ecological pyramids?
Mr Speaker, it's really important for young people when they're learning concepts to understand that there were people before them who came up with these concepts. Now, Mr Speaker, in Year 1, children will learn about Carl de Vries. Why are we learning about Carl de Vries? Because he realised that bees dance when they communicate. How fun is it for a Year 5 buzz around the room, because that's how bees communicate. But we didn't just make this up. There was a guy who thought about it. And we need to be more aspirational for our kids, because if we're just going to be worried about some theory...
Sorry. Would 3 people on the front bench like to leave? Well, if you don't want to leave, don't perform like that. And we'll also have concise answers. Willow Jean Prime.
How can parents be confident that the curriculum was written with their kids' learning in mind when Year 7 students will have to study Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the 1852 Constitution Act, the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution in 1 hour a week?
Well, Mr Speaker, parents should feel confident because finally we have a curriculum that is not just so narrowly focused on New Zealand history, but actually teaches children our place in the world. The Aero Review said that children enjoy history more when they are learning about faraway places and our connection to the world. And if that speaker thinks we're just going to be focused on one area of the curriculum, New Zealand history, well then she can take that till the election, but I'm more ambitious for our kids.
The Honourable David Seymour.
Has the Minister heard any serious suggestions that maybe children shouldn't be taught Newtonian mechanics because Newton was a white man?
No, sorry.
Supplementary.
Willow Jean Prime.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How can parents be confident that the curriculum was written with their kids' learning in mind when maths experts called it potentially damaging to learners, history teachers called it developmentally inappropriate, and technology teachers said it was a major step backwards?
Well, Mr Speaker, I can tell her that parents should feel confident in this curriculum because there are a lot of other teachers and educators and principals on the front line who take time to write to me and say things like, I want to take a moment to express my full support for the work you and your team are doing to undertake in developing the new and launching the new curriculum. As a principal of a small rural school, I see firsthand how these changes are encouraging deeper learning, higher expectations and a renewed sense of purpose across Aotearoa classrooms. So, Mr Speaker, these 2 new curriculum areas have been in place for a year and we are already seeing improved achievement in the classroom.
Question number 12, Kahurangi Kata. Just wait for a bit of quiet.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Children. Does she stand by her statement, quote, "We have refocused the children's system on what matters, the safety and well-being of children, whether in the community or residences, and the results are clear," end quote. If so, which results is she referring to?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Karen Chua.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Yes, in the context in which it was made, which was the achievement of the first ever reduction of harm in youth justice and care and protection residences, a 14% decrease since 2024, which is a reduction of 33 findings of harm. Other results from the Safety of Children in Care report include a decrease in physical harm findings from the previous year and a reduction in harm by staff. However, at the same time, I also stand by a statement I made in the House during question time on the 23rd of October that, quote, I acknowledge that the latest Safety of Children and Care report shows that in 12 months to 31st of March 2025, there was an increase of 23 children and young people who had a finding of harm compared to the previous year.
Is it correct that there has been an increase in recorded findings of harm for children in state care?
Mr. Speaker, I believe I just answered that, where I said there was a finding of there was an increase of 23 children and young people who had a finding of harm compared to the previous year.
Supplementary. What does she say to Te Aotearoa Tamariki Chief Executive Aaron Jones and Children's Commissioner Dr Claire Ahmad, who warned, quote, overall, the number of children in state care being abused or neglected has increased and this is unacceptable, end quote. And, quote, we must pay attention to the fact that 10% of all children in state care were abused or neglected over the last 12 months, end quote.
What I would say, Mr. Speaker, is yes, definitely it's unacceptable. No child should be hurt or harmed in this country. And if you are taking care of a vulnerable young child in our care, don't hurt them, don't harm them, and take responsibility for your actions. Because at the end of the day, if people that care for our young people don't hurt or harm them, we wouldn't be in this position to have Oranga Tamariki.
Supplementary. What does she say to Ngā Morehu, the survivors of state abuse, as we come to the anniversary of their apology, when reports tell us that the cycle of abuse they endured continues for tamariki in state care today?
Mr. Speaker, what I would say is that the highest risk of harm is return to home care. This is where families and whānau are given a second chance to look after young people who have been removed from their home in the first place. We put support around those whānau and family, but ultimately at the end of the day, the person responsible for the harm is the people that are caring for those children.
Supplementary. Does she support implementing all recommendations of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in State Care? If not, why not?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, can you just repeat that question?
Of course. Does she support implementing all recommendations of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in State Care? If not, why not?
Mr. Speaker, there is currently a work program in place around the report of abuse in state care and faith-based care. What I would say to you is that this is a large work program which the government is committed to working through to make sure that across the board that young people are safe in the homes that they live in, and that is my priority.
That concludes oral questions. Before I call a Business Committee decision on a motion, anybody who's leaving should leave the House quietly. However, in accordance with the determination of the Business Committee, I call on the Right Honourable Winston Peters to move a motion on the election in Maiamna. The Right Honourable Winston Peters.